For a market like Australia, how unusual is this situation?
Well, very unusual, certainly for a publicly listed company. It's not unknown to have an internal spat for the occasional director to resign, but never en masse like this, including the chairman at the same time. So, yes, it's really quite unusual.
And as I sort of alluded to in the introduction, this could be spun as, as a victory for Richard White, given how long this has sort of been dragging out. But when it comes to stakeholders, when it comes to shareholders, what are the implications going forward?
Well, yes, I think you could argue that as the founder of the company, he could look at this and say, well, I've resumed control of the company. It's not clear yet what position he's going to take post the announcements on Wednesday, but I would not be surprised if he put himself in as some form of chairman. I think that if you're an investor in the corporation, whether a large investor like an institution or a retail investor, you should look at this with some horror, because there have been clear issues going on there and he's taking control. Yes, he is the, magic and the brains behind what they've achieved, but equally there are some findings there that have simply not been satisfied. And the way we try to check against that sort of self-interest from continuing in a company is we appoint independent directors, and every single independent director, including the chairman, has resigned. So flouting what do we call the practices and recommendations of Australia's corporate governance rules. And just from that point of view, you should be wary. No institutional investor is going to be happy with that arrangement.
This seems, I think when this sort of unfolded in October, right, when he was forced to step down, string of allegations of misconduct, the, board review of governance and looking into the behavioural standards that have sort of arisen from some of these accusations as well. Is it kind of shocking that this is where we've ended up? And as you say, this is sort of the, if it's a choice between corporate governance standards and talent, clearly the latter has won out here.
One out for now. I think it's important to watch this space and see what the institutions require and whether going long term it'll be possible for him to remain in that position. I think there are still some issues there, and I wouldn't say this is over by any stretch. I think the really important point to note is that this is a continuation of an issue, as you said, that rose last year. And while there's more accusations and more alarming concerns raised, they're the same themes. And an attempt was made to reach some sort of settlement which involved White remaining in the company, and that on the side these issues would be resolved. That has now fallen over, and we still don't know what the allegations were, nor the legal reports that were filed or obtained by the company about his behaviours. Initially, the company said there was no finding of misconduct by Mr White, but there's been further information since, and my understanding is that Mr White refuses to make those documents public. I think the institutional shareholders will have putting a lot of pressure to bear on that, and even if he doesn't capitulate, if he still insists they're private, I think the documents will be leaked to the market, and I think it will make his position untenable going forward. It may not occur straight away, but I think you would not assume he's won completely yet.
Is there, and I suppose the question is then, how do you see shareholders react, right? Because it seems like a lot of those shareholders were more concerned about having him retained, despite these, allegations and concerns. So I do wonder, when you have the situation when the board is supposed to be overseeing an executive who's also a major shareholder, who's also a founder, who, as you say, is sort of, the magic and the brains perhaps behind the very business. How complex does it get, and is there I guess, a best way out of this conflict?
I think I see three implications coming out of this. The first is, of course, that it shows you that the governance at WiseTech is really immature. I mean, it's been very successful, but it has not really got beyond the founder base and the idea that there's a fiefdom and Richard White is in charge of it. I think that's very much still the case now. And that means also that we need to look at his age and wonder why there's no successor in line for him to take over, and those plans have not been organised. And that's what responsible and mature organisations do. Even if you have a founder, now would be the time for them to be doing that, and they're clearly not going to. The second message I get out of this is that sex and business don't mix, and that as a consequence, really, what it's telling you is that you can't have relationships with staff, intimate personal relationships with staff or with your supply chain. And if you do, you put the company in all manner of problems, like has happened here. And really, we've got to a point now where that has to be dealt with as an issue. And no corporation in Australia is really tolerating that. WiseTech is not on its own here. There are a number of other institutions last year that fell into trouble. Channel 7, Channel 9, Country Road, to name just a few, where there were problems. And so this is an ongoing concern. And I think that the message to Australian corporates is that we do need independent directors, and they do serve a real role here. Some people would argue this is social governance. It's not relevant to the financial running of the corporation. I would contend the two are very connected. And I think the confidence and the trust in the company depends upon feeling that it's subject to robust governance. So if you want to put that at peril, you put your stock market or your stock price at peril. And that's what we're seeing play out here.